Hello, everyone, and welcome to another live stream. Today, I'm going to give you a little bit of the behind the scenes on a video I recently did where I had the opportunity to visit a mosque and interact with a bunch of different Muslims. And well, me and my brother were there. My brother was the cameraman. And yeah, had a lot of opportunities to learn, had a lot of opportunities to have interfaith discussions, and had a lot of opportunities to just continue to sort of understand a little bit more about what actually goes on inside a mosque because that's something I was never aware of. But we'll see. If you want to watch the full video, it'll be in the description below. But I will probably I'll just gonna piece through it. I'll jump through it. It's about an hour long, so I'm gonna jump through it, give you a little bit of the understanding of what's taking place and what happened behind the scenes. So let's just get started. Jump right into it. Hello, Ayub. And maybe I'll sometime I'll react to that video. We will see. So let's jump right into it.
All right, yeah, no,
Let's get this go fast.
might not be the cleanest part there, but this is the mosque and the school building, all the way going down. You can see we have a big parking lot with over 200 parking spaces.
So, well, first thing, the reason some people ask me about the camera in this video, when we got there, I realized that the gimbal wasn't working, so my brother had to use his hands to operate the camera, so that's why it's not quite as steady, because the gimbal wasn't working. So that's why the camera work came out the way it did. But yeah, so like over here, this was the whole like school area, and then to the left was the actual like mosque area, and down in like the basement was like the gym area that we would have been in, and so that was the kind of the layout of the building.
As well. We always get full. You'll see as the evening comes about, you might have trouble getting out because there are so many cars here. So we just finished a prayer service. It was at 6 o'clock. That's why you see a lot of people leaving. The next prayer service is going to be 7:36 or 7.
Well, actually, interesting enough, we were waiting. We before this video got started, we had to wait a few minutes as Ahmed was finishing up his prayers as well. So we were kind of waiting on the parking lot, getting the equipment set up when he was completing that. But it was true that a bunch of people left. I didn't show it in the video, but when we went outside and left the building, it was packed full. It was packed full for the night. Like people were going to stay there late. So it was hard to get out. But yeah, so the parking lot was really full when we left, and he wasn't wrong about that because he mentions it a little bit later, I think.
1:37. That's the sunset prayer. So as you know, it's Ramadan. Ramadan is when we're fasting throughout the day, and now that it's we break the fast at sunset. So that's when everyone gets together. We have a prayer service around sunset. That's the Maghrib prayer. Then we'll have a big dinner. So you guys are going to be in for a treat tonight.
That's right.
All right. So if you want to, you can
The
jump.
big dinner was Polynesian food, and I never had Polynesian food before, so that was a first. So that was another thing that was in the experience.
Right in.
So we can skip there.
It's a separate partition between the two. Any questions you have on the calligraphy or anything?
I was gonna say, is there any like meaning behind?
I was actually kind of surprised. So the lobby did have like decorations and the wording. I was actually kind of surprised that the whole school and like building didn't have more of these styles of decorations and stuff. It was pretty well limited to the lobby and then like the main prayer room that they had. So that was the main thing that was one of the things that surprised me about the actual setup of the building.
Some of the decorations we see here, some of the
So decorations are
ornamentation.
going to be the decorations. It's not a religious meaning. It's more of a cultural thing. See the arches and stuff. Those come back from the Persian/Ottoman area. Even if you look at maybe the Mughal period in India or the Ottomans, most of them had many arches. So that's why you'll see arches have become a traditional part of how maybe in a way Islamic architecture is. So that's just the decorations are more of a cultural significance. But if you have any questions on any words that you see around you, like for example, you'll see in the blue tiles at the back or at the front, right?
Yeah.
Those are actually the names of God. So
Oh.
yeah, I mean there are 99 names. known names of God, and we just made tiles out of them, and you'll see more of these even inside the mosque as well.
Are those also names of God? Right?
Yeah, so that's a good question. So that is actually a short prayer that we say whenever we enter the mosque. So it's in Arabic, it's Allahumma ftahli ababa rahmatik. In English, it means, "Oh my Lord, open the doors of mercy for us." So literally, as you're walking through the doors of the mosque, entering it, you're asking God to open the doors of mercy for you. So that's a short prayer that we say. We have a prayer for almost everything.
That was the other thing that was interesting to me. Well, at the very least, it was one of the things that it was like everything. I mean, I expected it, but like a lot of things were written in Arabic, and I was like, most of the time, I don't always show it in the video. I cut out a lot of stuff, but a lot of time I was like, what does this mean? What does this mean? Or trying to understand the definition of things because I couldn't read them. But yeah, we also the school area. Even though it was like, it was smaller than some areas, like this school is actually pretty big. And I cut out a lot of the classrooms and stuff because we did walk through a little bit. I just cut out a lot of that because it was just, it was just hallways and it was just classrooms and stuff like that. But it was definitely just interesting to me how big of a school building they had and how big the community there was. Because normally when I think about these areas and I think about the demographics, I don't necessarily think of Islam being a large demographic in the area where I was, but it's right on the outskirts of like a city, and so it had a pretty large population, at least in that local area, and it seemed like that was the area where a lot of Muslims would congregate for the very purpose of they would have their own community and they would be all near each other. So it just seemed kind of interesting how they all sort of congregate to this one region. Probably for also like immigration purposes and stuff, because a lot of people who were there were actually immigrants and from other countries and stuff like that. There was a lot of them who weren't just strictly born in America. So the demographics there were completely different. And so it was just it was actually kind of different for me because it was one of the first times in my life that I was in an area or in a place or a building where the demographics were a lot of weren't from America, like they were from a lot of other places, which just changes the dynamics of a place.
Here, mosques, you don't necessarily need too many things, right? So that's why it's easier to have a mosque, maintain it. Schools are a lot harder, but schools are the need now because we have we have a wait list of 200 plus students, so yeah, we can't keep up.
And this is K through 12 or
preschool to 12.
So anyway, I'll skip over the school part. Again, if you want to watch the full video, you can. But so this was the imam who then showed us around for a bit here. He was extremely nice. I had a hard time. So he had a tendency to talk a little bit quiet sometimes, and so in the beginning there we didn't have a mic for him. We only brought 2 mics. So it was just kind of a situation where we were trying to, like, half the time we were trying to figure out the mic situation. So you see us passing around the mic throughout the video, trying to get the audio quality up. But yeah, so that was the situations that we didn't bring more than 2 mics, and so some of the time it was like hard for us to pick up what he was saying. But he did end up then showing us around and sort of helping us understand what takes place there. So we could have a better insight in what was happening there.
The imam from Imam. So he does work on comparative religion. Okay. So this is his first visit to a mosque. He's been to churches and synagogues.
I have been at a lot of different places at this point. I haven't been at a synagogue yet. I do want to go there. Okay. I've been at multiple different types of churches and denominations. First time at a mosque. Very, very glad to be here. We visited a Mormon temple out in DC one time. And I visited Eastern Orthodox, very like traditional, like more Orthodox church.
When I mentioned that, I forgot. So some people might be wondering if they know my channel, like Eastern Orthodox. Did you ever make a video about that? No, I never did. My one friend is Eastern Orthodox, and I went to church with him, to his church. And so that's what I was referencing to. But when I said it, I didn't actually realize that I actually never made a video about that. I just simply went there for my friend's. He was having his kid getting baptized. And he asked me if I would be willing to come, and I said sure. So I went to an Eastern Orthodox church, but I never actually made a video about it. So if anyone was looking for that, it doesn't exist.
But yeah, first time at a mosque, so this is fun.
All right. Okay. So I said, yeah.
I hope you get the understanding that you need to have, right? Did you go upstairs? Did you see the?
Yeah, I'm just taking him upstairs
okay,
now.
you're going there, right? Well, that's your main place.
But it was also
Yeah, we can.
because I knew when it came to the removing of the shoes and stuff, I didn't even think about it because as I said, like you don't they made the comment that you don't necessarily need to remove your shoes when praying, but that they do it for the sake of like cleanliness because so many people are going to be praying on the ground and prostrating, things like that. But it was I didn't even think about it until they were like, hey, by the way, you need to take your shoes off, and I was like, what? And I looked around like, oh, there's all these little like cubby things for the shoes, and I was like, okay, I don't think I even noticed them until they said something because I think I was about to almost walk in without taking my shoes off, but then we ended up doing that.
If you're praying in the open, say, not in a building or in another building that's not a mosque, you don't have to take off your shoes.
Yeah, right there.
Right? We only do it here just to keep the place, clean and tidy and so on, right? Keep the carpet. Normally everybody's putting their heads on the ground, so they need to have a clean place to do that. But otherwise, outside if you pray on the ground itself, the bare ground, gravel or whatever is there, we can pray there, and we have to put our heads there. As long as the place is clean enough, then we pray there. And basically, what it means is that there is nothing such as like maybe a dog came there and urinated, or there's some feces and so on. Once those are removed, then the place is clean.
If I had no context for what he was referencing to there, I would have been a bit confused. But I knew that he was referencing to one of the hadith where it talks about, dog and the feces and things like that. So I knew what hadith he was referencing to. But I will be honest, if I didn't know the hadith he was referencing to, I would probably have been a bit confused about that statement. I'm like, we're inside a building. Why would we be concerned about animal stuff? But then I kind of understood what he was talking about.
Actually, I have a funny story actually to go along with that. I know a masjid in North Jersey that wanted to because the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam used to pray with his shoes on, so they wanted to revive that practice. So they had people praying on the carpet with the shoes on. Well, within a year, I don't know the exact frame of time, might have been less, a little more. They actually had to remove the carpet, replace the carpet, and they said, okay, no more shoes in our masjid, because it's a practical thing.
Yeah.
And the Prophet prayed usually with the shoes on, and that is because the ground of the mosque was actually the earth itself, right?
Oh, okay. Yeah.
It was the most simple structure, and the ground was just the sand and.
And so does the purpose of the prayer rug that a lot of people use, is that part of the fact of like keeping a clean surface?
Yeah. Yes, that's right. It's to keep it so you can spread that anywhere, whatever is on it.
But what was interesting though is that there was people I saw a handful of people, not too many, a handful of people using prayer rugs even inside of the building. I guess to be extra sure that the ground was clean, even though technically speaking they were laying out rugs themselves and making sure it was clean themselves. So I saw that there were some people who were trying to be, I guess, extra cautious, which intrigued me a bit. And then we did end up going up to the so let's see, right there. Yeah, so right here, they had 3 different areas where people would pray. I showed 2 of them. So we walked through this one. And as you see there, they actually have TV screens in the room so that that would be focused on the imam, so that when the prayers take place, that they can actually be watching the imam while they're praying, or also maybe studying the Quran or studying something while the imam's teaching or whatever. But so they had like 2 rooms, and this room would be used second if the top room, the main room, was full. So if the main room was full, they would use this room. And then if this room was full, they would use the gymnasium. So if anyone watched the video, or if anyone does go back to watch the video, you'll see that at the end of the video, we're eating in the gym, and they have these rugs and stuff laid out on the floor in the gym, there in the bottom right corner. And this is actually also an area where they would also pray if they would be full in both of these rooms. So they would have 3 rooms for prayer, and the gym also had TV screens full that would be focused on the imam in those sort of situations. So I was really expecting just one giant like sanctuary, because at a lot of churches they will have a lot I should say bigger churches will have a giant sanctuary where you would it's like almost not like an arena, but like you have the pews, and then you have sort of maybe a grandstand of some sorts, and you just have a bunch of seats, and then you have where the preacher would be. A lot of times churches are set up like that, where they just have a giant sanctuary, and that's where everyone will congregate to worship, to pray, to do communion, to do things like that. They will participate in whatever's going on that day in that giant sanctuary. But in this situation, the sanctuary, or the main prayer room, was actually rather small, which shocked me because the building was so big. I expected the main building to be big, but they were using 3 different rooms. Now, based on what I can understand, based on the conversations I had with them during that, the reason why it was structured like that is because I think this place was, when it was first started, didn't nearly have as many members, but then over the years it grew so much, and they made it more of a community center than they did anything else. It became very much of a community center. And so they just used the extra space that they had, the gym and stuff, to make up for the fact that the main room wasn't big enough. Plus the main room was divided, at least at the time, into 2 rooms, with the women on one side and the men on the other, which then obviously affects the amount of space you have to work with. But yeah.
Those who are staying.
So a lot of people were commenting and asking me what happened here. Why did the video get so blurry and wonky there for the middle portion? So what happened was my brother's not accustomed to using cameras. He's kind of unfamiliar with cameras. So he increased the exposure because this room was pretty dark. This room wasn't very bright. So he increased the exposure to increase the brightness of the video, and the more you increase the exposure, the harder it is for the camera to render what's happening. So what ended up happening was he increased the exposure to the point that the camera was having trouble rendering the screen, having trouble rendering the video, and so it ended up becoming very blurry. But we made it work. I was like, you know what? We're gonna post it. We're gonna make it work. It's not a big enough deal for me to try to redo the whole video again. So people were asking me, who's the cameraman? What was going on? I was like, it's just technical issues. He wasn't aware, and I didn't catch it until the end. And that's why you started using my phone there at the end, because I realized that what happened. But it is what it is. Let's see here. So he's scanning the room. So I realized also that a large part of this structure was, and I was really expecting a lot of this artwork to be religiously meaningful. Although they kept telling me that this was, purely for aesthetics, purely a style of art, that's more traditional, but it has no real religious significance. Although noticeably, obviously, they don't have any sort of icons or anything like the Catholic Church would have or an Orthodox Church would have, because they would find that to be, utterly detestable. So there was no pictures of Jesus, no crosses, no pictures of Muhammad, nothing along those lines. There's not even really depictions of living things, which was also something I noticed. They didn't even have depictions of animals, depictions of plants, really. There may have been a couple, flowers and stuff, but for the most part, nothing like that. And again, I came to realize by someone I was talking to that, again, the fear would be idolatry or worshiping anything that's alive. And so they stick with like a lot of shapes and just colors, and things like that. Things that are more just geometrical, basically, to avoid any sort of problems or contentions. But yeah, and so then also the whole floor again is kept clean, to make sure that everyone in there could pray and stuff. And I was very intrigued. I was very intrigued to see that the place was, I guess, fairly casual would be the word I use, meaning that they didn't have a problem with me videoing. They didn't have a problem with me talking with Ahmed in there. There was people in there reading. There was people in there praying, interacting with the reading Hadith, all these different things. So there was a lot of people in there just kind of minding their own business. It almost made me think of in like a church setting. There will be times of maybe like reflection or something where people will go into the sanctuary before the service starts and they'll just read their Bibles or be praying. And this will be like before the service, before that take place. But I'm assuming he said there's a lot of people who are just staying at the mosque because it was Ramadan and the last 10 days of Ramadan. So some people were literally just staying at the mosque for those last 10 days to honor Allah, to read the Quran, all these different things. And so there was just a bunch of people there. There was like sleeping bags there and like little tents and stuff set up at some areas. Like I didn't focus on them too much, but there were like actual areas where people were sleeping and staying at the mosque itself. I'm not sure if they had families or not. I'm not sure if their wives and kids were with them or not. So, but I just knew that some of these men were staying there full time. And I thought that was interesting. I really like the beard man. Looks good. I'm glad you expressed your opinions well, Chuckabug. But yeah, so that was kind of some of my first impressions about this place.
Right, so the geometric designs.
Yeah, so he talked about the geometric designs.
That will indicate
These were like the different times of prayers, different times of things that they would have to do throughout the day. And I think I cut it out. I think I cut it out at one point, but I did ask about this sign, and he's like, wait, let me explain some other things before we jump right into that. Because like this is like the first thing I saw. This was like the first thing I noticed. It was like right in the middle of the wall, and the room was very like open. Like there was no seats or anything. It was just a very open room, so like anything on the wall stuck out. But then here's...
This will be the time just after sunset.
It's always a good time.
Yeah.
So like commentaries.
Yes,
Okay.
Commentaries. And there sometimes I think we have a few other books.
Yeah, so they had
hadith.
They had hadith on hand, but they had Qurans and hadith on hand. They had some Qurans that were strictly in just Arabic, and then they had other Qurans that were Arabic and English. And they had hadith that were like basically just Arabic and in English as well. Most of their English translations were on the bookshelf behind him. I can't really see it, but he's right there. On the bookshelf behind him were a lot of the English translations of either the Quran or the hadith and stuff. And so if anyone, didn't know Arabic as well, they could, use the English translations. Hello, Alif. Are you and your brother twins? We are not twins. He is 9 years older than me. So far from twins. Far from twins. He is 9 years older than me, married and has kids. So yeah, he is not my twin, sadly, but I know we get told a lot that we look alike, that we look very similar and stuff. I never quite saw it, but a lot of people say we do, so I just kind of roll with it. But yeah, he is not my twin. He is like 9 years older than me, a lot older than me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think the one thing that kind of like in my mind, since I never visited a mosque before, I was trying to.
Yeah, I was just talking about how I was surprised how casual it seemed. Like I was expecting it be very closed off, because within the Old Testament of the Bible, this was kind of my reference point. Within the Old Testament of the Bible, the synagogue would have been a very holy place. So like the very center of the synagogue was the Holy of Holies, and that's where the high priest would go. And the only reason why the high priest was allowed to go there was because basically God's spirit would dwell in the Holies of Holies. And the high priest was the only one basically ordained to be able to be in his presence like that. And you had cases of prophets and stuff having the luxury of having that sort of experiences. But oftentimes the high priest was the only one that was actually like allowed to perform that sort of ceremony. And from the Christian perspective, the reason why that was so important, the reason why the high priest is representative is if you take the Old Testament to the New Testament, the high priest would be the representative, basically like we would see Christ, where Christ is the only person who can enter into Holy of Holies because he is now he's the only perfect being to ever live. And therefore he is like basically the high priest and the intermissionary that can forgive us of our sins between humans who are sinful and God who is perfect. And so that would be kind of the significance. And that was kind of my reference point. I was like, okay, will the mosque be similar to that, where like this main prayer room is like super holy? But it didn't at least come across that way. The only times where it seemed like there was maybe that level of sanctity was during the prayers themselves. But even then, like as long as people focus on the prayers, that was the main important thing. Who's your guide? Our guide was Ahmed for most of it. Let me see. So that guy right there on the right, Ahmed, was our main guide. He was the guy who was actually assigned to guide us during the video. The imam over here, I forget his name now off the top of my head. He ended up joining us for this portion of the video and kind of showing us around and explaining things because he was sort of the head imam of the place. But yeah, so this was our main guide, but this guy joined us for a large portion of the video here in the main segment. But we ended up, after we left this room, he ended up leaving because he had to attend to some duties while we continued the tour of the building. So yeah, so that was kind of where we were at with that whole thing.
Certain religious texts, like you're not even.
Well, it speaks about God. It speaks of who He is, that He has no partner.
Okay. Mm-hmm. And you said you're an imam, right?
Uh-huh.
What's your role as an imam within the mosque? What sort of practices do you do? What sort of things do you lead? All that sort of stuff.
The prayers, I will lead the prayers, but the prayers anybody else can lead also. If I'm not around, if the imam is not around, anybody else can lead the prayer. As long as, of course, they know how to do it. Sometimes they're special.
So, my bad. So what was funny about this, so he was kind of explaining what an imam does, and so he talks about how he leads prayers, how he helps with counseling, how he performs marriages, and how he does he'll help give people advice and leadership, and if people have questions about their faith, they come to him. So like he was kind of explaining, what they do, and I don't know if I mentioned it in this video. I know I mentioned it in some other videos. It honestly did remind me to a certain extent of how a pastor or even a priest may operate within a church, because a pastor basically helps teach, leads prayer, and does counseling, leads marriages, and is supposed to help answer any questions that people may have about Christianity or about their faith. So it was just interesting, the sort of the leadership roles and the things that they try to fulfill within a church and also within a mosque had a lot of overlap. Now, again, how they approach that would be different, but at the it did seem interesting to me how there was quite a bit of overlap in that structure. Why the 30 FPS? Again, that was because of the high exposure. He set the settings to a high exposure, and then that ended up making the video blurry. But it is what it is. Couldn't do too much about that.
Again, these are, while these are functions of the imam, they're not exclusive to him.
And those are.
It's really bad here. So like, again, the reason why it got even worse here is because the lighting in this building, in this room, was extremely bright. It was like a bright white light because of the walls and stuff. And so the blurriness just got worse because the exposure was so high. Now I think partway through this section he turns down the exposure, which helps the video a little bit. But the exposure is really, really high, so that's why the video is so blurry. At this point, he is sort of explaining he's explaining the purpose of the charity, the charity that they do during this time period, and the required charity that Muslims are supposed to do. And this is us coming down the basements, coming down the stairs from the main prayer room was upstairs, so we were coming downstairs to the main foyer area, which then would lead us back to which would then lead us back out to the lobby, and you could go to the school, or you go to the stairs again and go down the gym and stuff. But we stopped by the ablution room, and so we ended up again. the exposure is still pretty high, but we ended up going to the ablution room. Now I didn't ask, but I wasn't sure exactly how they would have cleaned themselves here. So I know that they wash their feet, their hands, and things like that. But I wasn't entirely sure what the setup. I'm assuming this is where the water comes out and stuff. And I didn't know if this. I guess they sit on these. I guess they would just sit on these little stools and then do ablution. That's what I assumed they did, but I didn't ask. Maybe I should have asked. But this was the ablution room. This is where they would go to, get ready for the prayers. Now, what was interesting was I don't recall seeing anyone coming in here and getting ready for prayers. I didn't see it happen. We weren't around when that happened, but I assumed people did it. But I did not observe it at all. Did you research a prayer that you and Ahmed talked about on live, like the ancient Jewish prayer? Jews and Christians used to pray like that back in the day, but most of them are abandoning it. I did not get the opportunity to look into that yet. So no, I did not have the opportunity to look into that yet. Actually, this past couple of days have been pretty crazy. I haven't had much time to do much of anything. But no, I have not had the opportunity yet to look into it. I might look into that eventually. But as of now, I have not had the time to, because I have been packed full these past couple of days. It's been pretty crazy. If I seem pretty tired right now, I am tired. I am pretty tired. I haven't got much sleep recently, but yeah. No, I have not yet had the opportunity to leave.
Like most places, mosques will have an area like this where you sit.
The cameraman.
That's awesome.
Mm-hmm. It's crazy. I did find that meme funny. That meme was pretty funny. But then we went out. So after this, we had about what was it? We had about half an hour or so. I think it was about at this point we had about half an hour or so before they wanted to start the prayer. Oh, we got the loading screen of death. My internet. Huh.
For example, one would be.
That's weird.
Okay. Yeah.
Let's see here.
Because I have.
For the sister.
Okay. So basically after that, we had about, I think after we visited the ablution room, we had about 20 or 30 minutes left until the breaking of the fast, until iftar. And so he wanted to show me some things real quick. So we went down to the gym. This is where they were preparing food. So this is what I meant. So like you see the TV screens right there. They had more TV screens. This is where the prayer rugs were set up. So like it wasn't super full at this point. It got fuller by the end of the day. I didn't show it, but it did get fuller by the end of the day. But yeah, this is also where people would be praying too if things got really full. But this is like the last place people would go. Like this was the last place people wanted to go. It was at the bottom, it was in the basement. But the gymnasium was really big, so it accommodated a lot of space. But yeah, so this was then the gymnasium where we would end up eating the food. And it was very interesting. What threw me for a loop partially when I visited this building was I was expecting it just to be, I guess, a religious building. I guess I was just expecting it to be like a place of prayer. But it ended up becoming a whole community center. And I think that really did kind of surprise me. I was like, oh, it legitimately reminded me of a community center. It had a school, it had a gymnasium, it had a game room, it had a bunch of stuff. And I was just like, oh, this is legitimately like a community center, which just struck me. I just wasn't expecting that. And so, yeah, this was the guy helping set up food. We actually ended up talking to this guy. talking about where he worked, talking about kind of what we do, talking about our different faiths and going back and forth. So like he he was an extremely nice guy. He was a very nice guy, and he also helped prepare the food, which I was very appreciative of. He helped prepare again. It was like Polynesian food. It was actually really good. I forget what we were talking about here.
Part about the kursi, the throne that is throne extends across across the skies and the heavens. That's basically why it's called.
Oh yeah, we were talking about that verse again. That verse from earlier.
I said before going on, it's something that Prophet Moses had recited before he was going to talk to the Pharaoh. Like in Surah Taha, it says, so he decided, oh my Lord, make my speech easy for me, and it's so yeah, actually we are fair for everything. Alhamdulillah.
So when he shared that story, what was actually interesting was I had to think of the biblical account of that story. Because within the Bible, so he shared that, within like the Quranic telling or the Hadith tradition, I think he's quoting the Quran though. There is where Moses basically prays for, that he would be able to speak well. But within the Bible, within the Old Testament, Moses comes to the burning bush, and he actually tells God, like, I can't speak well, like, don't send me out to the Egyptians. I can't do this. And God's like, I will send with you Aaron, since he'll help speak in your place. But basically he tells Moses, do not be afraid, like, go out there and do what I tell you to do. I will send with you Aaron as a helper, but at the end of the day, I'm calling you to do this because I am God. And I am going to deliver the Israelites out of the Egyptians' hands, and I'm going to use you as a tool to do that. Do not fear, do not be afraid, and follow me and have faith. But yeah, so I just had to think about the biblical account of that story. I wonder why it keeps freezing. It froze. Why is it frozen? Well, this is awkward. Huh. Well, this this live stream may come to a quick halt because I cannot get it to play. I cannot get it to do anything. I might need to restart. But at this point, it's been about 40 minutes, so I don't know if I'll actually be able to do that. And I don't even know is the live stream even still going? It looks like the live stream's still going. It's probably from the exposure. Okay, so while it's frozen, I'm gonna have to shut down my computer. And okay, I think the live stream's just going to come to an early close then, because, well, I don't know what to do about this. This never happened before. Okay, well, sorry guys, this is going to be the end. I'm gonna have to shut this computer off and go on. But anyway, so if you want to go check out the full video, feel free to go check out the full video. Link will be in the description below. And I did enjoy my experience. I did have opportunity. During the meal, I just turned the cameras off. During the meal, we had a lot of good conversations. We talked a lot about. He asked me what I believe. Asked me a little bit about my background. So I got to share with him about I grew up from an Anabaptist Christian background. Talked about sort of the scriptures and things like that. We were eating some food. We were talking about family, our family backgrounds and things like that. So off camera, we had a lot of good conversations, and just discussions and stuff. And obviously, respected his privacy. We didn't talk. I'm not going to share much about what we necessarily talked about off camera. But we had a lot of good conversations off camera. Then during the meal itself, I didn't record much of the meal. only took snapshots and little screenshots and stuff. And obviously the prayers were at the end. So again, anyone can check out the rest of the video. But yeah, basically the rest of the video was we checked out. They had like a little. That was one thing that interested me. If we could go to it, one thing that interested me was the little like funeral room thing they had. Because that was like something I'd never seen before in a building. But that's like where they prepare the bodies and stuff for the funeral. And then yeah, so. But yeah, so go. I guess this is a cliffhanger. Go check out the rest of the video for yourself if you haven't. Yeah, see you next time. I don't know what happened, and I'm sorry. And I'm sorry about that. But thank you everyone for tuning in. As always, friends, go out there and light the world yourselves. I'm going to power this thing off, so it's going to be, we'll see how this works.